Hello and welcome to Project Zero, where we hear about the journeys from some of the top project managers in the game. My name's Alex Tuck, and I am the host. I'm here with my friend and management consultant, Amy Marshall-Carney. Amy is the co-founder of Sage Echelon Consulting. Welcome to the podcast, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Amy, tell us a little bit about yourself and how do you help people at Sage Echelon?
Sure. Yes. Me and my partner, Kathy, we recently came together to bring our talents where we've been individually surveying folks, primarily related to problems or opportunity attainment. That's how we like to see it. So when people see that they're struggling to reach the performance that they're looking for, or they just can't figure out a path to get there, that's typically why we come in and we help them out. We help them assess the situation, guide maybe some alternative roadmaps, get them through where they need to go, figure out what some solutions are that are attainable within their budget, things like that. So there's a blend of program project management in there, but there's also change management and then strategic coaching advice. So we also help them through that change and transition and help make sure that they're feeling confident about the steps they're taking.
Awesome. Love that. Thanks for that intro. Yeah, just thinking in the context of project management, because this podcast is really supposed to be a guide for those folks out there that want to get into project management or maybe work their way up. Where did it all start? How did you decide to go into project management? Was it natural?
Well, natural was how I did it before I even knew it. And then I'll tell you how I decided. So it actually brought me back to as a youngster. My father always, to this day, will still tell the young ones, I got a project for you. That turned into cutting wood, stacking wood, mowing lawns, figuring out how to get it done before the rain, things like that, planting the garden, weeding the garden. So those are things where, as a youngster, I was always, without even really knowing it, but hearing the word project, not really knowing that I was pretty good at planning things out, getting the tools I needed, getting it done so that I could actually go and have my reward, which was either swimming or hanging out with friends kind of thing. And then as a teenager, we have a very large family, in which that brings a lot of celebratory events, whether weddings, birthdays, holidays. And looking back through that lens, now you see that I had some elder aunts and relatives. They'd be the ones that coordinating the food plan or renting the hall or things like that. But I'd be in tow, doling out plates or organizing chairs or helping people to them. So that's when I naturally started to do some project-like activities. And then as I got into the world of work, I started out quite young at IBM and became engineer, on the move, took some classes and then realized well, yeah, okay, so this is really helping out my career. I can advance my career. And then I was in a class, I believe it was called Technical Project Management. And I continued to go to the professor's desk to just make sure I understood everything that he was asking. And one day he looked at me and he said, I think you got a career in project management. And at that time I said, what are you talking about? I wasn't doing it. I was doing industrial or process engineering back then, but never really even thought of project management as a job until I got into that class. So that was when I really opened up to what is project management? What does that mean? And why am I suited for it or seemingly suited for it?
Interesting. So how did it feel to transition from engineering, which is highly technical, right, to project management that is really soft skill driven, right? Is there anything you
Yeah,
learned or anything that was helpful?
yeah, that's a really good differentiator. So exactly, I did notice as I shifted. So the engineering technical brought in a lot of data, facts, presentation, and then another group typically in that world would pick that information up and do something with it. So you were very segregated in your roles. And then as I moved into a different organization and I was bringing a lot of the knowledge I had from lean manufacturing is what it was referenced to back then, or continuous process improvement. I brought that into a new role where, again, I wasn't classified as a project manager at that time, but I still was performing like one. And that's when I first started to realize the stakeholder engagement, the stakeholder conversations, the relationship building was by just the nature of the new position. It forced me to understand who am I working with? What do they need from me as the leader in that particular capacity? And then as I continued to evolve and get more exposed to project management proper. When I say that, meaning like offering educational classes, getting some more assessments from PMI, for example, and then ultimately getting my PMP, I realized, oh, okay, looking back was like, yeah, I had the fundamental building blocks of things happen in sequence or things iteratively happen and you pull things in. And then building on that in the new role, I started to say, well, I've got to work with people. They need things from me. And then it wasn't until the PMP that kind of culminated. I've been doing this for quite some time. What's going on here?
So
So,
interesting.
all of which continued to play out quite helpful as I moved into program management, because that technical understanding really helped me have insights as I worked with team members and those team members needing things. And one, language, right? I needed to understand what they're talking about. But two, I could also have that background around complexities or risks associated with that technical world when delivering solutions at a broader scale.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That's a good setup, right? For the reason why most of our listeners come here, right? And that's to listen about the project zero, right? That first project that you actually figured out how to be a project manager, or maybe figured out a piece of being a project manager, right? What was that project zero for you?
So that was back when I was at IBM. And again, at the time, I wouldn't have classified it as a project necessarily as much as I was given a charge, a task. And that task was a safety assessment for 3 departments at the time. And what that meant was we had to prepare for our regional or global audits that were coming in. And to prepare for those, there was what was beautiful about IBM is there's a lot of operating procedures and business plans and things that you could structure, if you will, that you had frame of reference. So that was really helpful. But then putting it into practice and implementing and making sure that it was living and breathing on the shop floor, the manufacturing floor. At that time, safety was it was a centerpiece. And we have dealt with a lot of chemicals on the manufacturing in that capacity. And what we didn't see, or we didn't have a large presence outside of the maintenance entity. So the manufacturing arm didn't really, not to say we weren't safe as much as we didn't have a focal point there. So I was asked, because I think it came from, I had a lot of energy, a lot of ambition and determination. That's what really, I think, had those folks gravitate towards me to say, yeah, I think she can pull this off. But what it translated into was, before I knew it, I am assessing, we had scoring, we had to communicate, which I'm putting up flyers. I'm making sure I'm talking to people, helping them understand where to access the assessments, how to conduct them, making sure they had connections with the maintenance community, the vending community. And so I was performing all the things that you would define as project management at that time, but not knowing that's what I was doing. I was just fulfilling a request. Someone had said, hey, Amy, we got to make this happen. And everyone in these 3 departments needs to be trained and properly perform an assessment. So those are the 2 objectives, the success criteria. And then I put together methods in which to pull that off.
Interesting. Cool. Was there like any trip ups within it, like something that you learned from that project at all?
I did. Yes, I did. So I actually was very youthful at the time. So I was quite zealous about the goal and attaining it. And I was micro focused on me and what role I had to play and how am I going to support this. And when it came, there was one particular subset of a department that I'd say was maybe not resistant, but kind of not as excited as I was about what was good safety, for crying out loud, right? And so when I got to their group and had to help them with the materials, or at least ask them, hey, have you reviewed this? None of them had done that. And so then I'm sitting there kind of really quickly deflated. Like, what? What do you mean? I've done all this work. Where you've seen the posters, like I've been talking about these. They're walking around. Like was very self-focused about what I had done. And then I built a great rapport with that group. Actually, one of the gentlemen I still am in contact with because of that rapport, but he held me accountable to what they needed and when it was helpful for them. And I hadn't even given it a thought as I was coming into this. Honestly, I can't even believe it was blind. for that.
It's so interesting. No, but that's as a project manager, that's all you're focused on now, right? Is like,
Yeah,
how do you deliver the value for your customers? And they were your customers,
exactly.
right?
Yeah. So that was my first learning of, oh, that, yeah, I need them to do that. That's not just me to do all my tasks. So yeah, it was
That's
a
so
good
cool.
learning.
And so did you have some leader within the organization that was helping you along with the project that could potentially mentor you or at least answer questions when you bumped up
Yes.
against stuff? Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
what was that
IBM
like?
being very hierarchical in terms of leadership structure. So I was in a manufacturing organization. Then you had your first level and second level and third and fourth and fifth leaders. And that was geographically scaled. So this happened to be my first level leader was my direct supervisor. He was not overseeing. It was actually the second level who had a broader scope of control over different departments. If you think about organizations today, they have strategic initiatives. Those strategic initiatives get broken down into operational objectives. This was very much that. So this was a kind of operational directive, and he was overseeing, and it was ultimately accountable for the outcome. And so I would check in with him. He would then give advice on the methods in which I was deploying and also give ideas. I didn't happen to approach him about this kind of snafu as much as by the time I came back to him to give him the update, he was aware of it.
That's so cool. I love and it's funny because that was so long ago, right? And but
Yeah,
there's so much you can
long time
still
ago.
learn. You probably still carry that experience with you today. And you sit down and you're
Oh,
like, all right, how am I thinking about my stakeholders and the value they're getting, right? So
yeah, yeah, definitely. Cause it was one of those stop you in your tracks moments. Like, what did I miss? What did I miss here? So that was for me being a very self-reflective individual, that was quite helpful. And yeah, I do bring it forward. Absolutely.
that's awesome. Yeah, I just remember with my big project, it was rolling out the Health Connect here in Vermont. And it was, man, we had some awesome project plans, like the most dependency driven, like blah, blah, blah. And then I remember going to meetings where my team literally didn't even show up. The people that were going to give me the updates just didn't even show up because they were like, we've got work to do. And then same idea clicked, right, Amy? It's like, oh, this isn't serving them in any way, but we still need to
Right.
get the information. So how can we do something to serve our entire team?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, fun, cool,
Yeah. Yeah.
great. So let's talk a little bit about the sort of your advice to some of those earlier stage project managers or mid stage project managers that are maybe thinking about going into program management, change management, some of the stuff that you're doing with Kathy now, right, at Sage Echelon. Like, what's like the number one skill that you think a project manager needs and why?
Oh, there's several, obviously, to comprise the art of being a project manager, but seeking to understand, I think coming whenever you're faced with something that you didn't expect and or as you're going in to understand a circumstance, don't make a lot of assumptions. Just really ask those questions, make sure that you leave with some good contextualization of the circumstance, the situation that's at hand. And the same thing, if you find, I find that advice to be very helpful across the board, different conversations, whether they're difficult conversations, whether they're easy conversations, whether they're conflict. If you seek to understand, it helps you. What I've found consistently is it gets you and whomever you're working with through that difficult situation in such a way that it's not contentious. You're really just genuinely trying to understand so that you can be helpful. So I say that that's one, in addition to all the others that you most likely would find out there and a lot of the literature, communication being number one, details, things of that nature.
Nice,
Really
awesome,
seeking
I
to
love it.
understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great because every single person that I've interviewed, I think, has said communication, but because that is really important. But you give a different nugget, a different way to think about it. Cool, awesome. All right, this one's a tough one, right? How do you define success in a project? And is that definition today the same as what you had earlier in your career?
No, it was not the same. I'll go back in time. Again, I was very task oriented, goal. Like I had a checklist, think more very tactical. That would have been my measure of success back then. Now, of course, that's the thing, right? You're supposed to deliver an outcome. And to me, it's when the customer has a semblance of acceptance. And I've yet to find in all of my programs or projects 100% accuracy. So with that, it's when the customer says, yes, I see what we've done here. That works. And we have some more to do. That's okay, because no one can foresee the future. So therefore, even when you're establishing goals and objectives, you think you have a really clear understanding of what you're looking for until you get into it. And then there needs to be some adjustments. And that's where change management, proper and project realm comes in, is scope adjustments and schedule adjustments. You're making them all throughout. So when the customer is satisfied with the results that you have within the defined project, I feel like you've done it.
Yeah. I mean, it's who knows what they want, right?
Right.
In anything that they do, right? You don't know
Mm,
until you start to see it and you're like, oh, this is good, but I'd like to see something better. And then you have to manage the risk, and there's give and takes for everything, right?
yeah. I've yet to see
Uh,
a customer that has exactly what they want clearly articulated and exactly what they get at the end.
yeah. I mean, we're not like baking a cake, and even a cake can be a little bit off, right? I mean,
Yeah,
these are some really complex challenges that we're trying to tackle.
absolutely. And that's a
Yeah.
great point. Depending upon the scope or the size of the initiative you're undertaking, there's a lot of trade-offs going on
Oh
in
yeah.
most
Oh, yeah.
cases. Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. So we talked about how you went from engineer to, I don't want to call it accidental project manager, but more playing the role of project manager without that title. Tell us what happened from there. Like, how did your career progress to becoming a
Sure.
program
Hey.
manager and then having your own company, right?
Yeah. So I moved wholeheartedly into the realm of content, continuous process improvement, excuse me. Lean manufacturing is what would have been referenced back then, and more specific, but then continuous process improvement opened the realm. And so that you're running initiatives, you're running events that we have to reduce cost by X, we have to improve quality by Y, we have to impact X number of stakeholders. All of those were I had hundreds of projects a year, and they were very scope defined, schedule set, resource managed, pretty contained. As that evolved, I then got into a portfolio level. So I was starting to oversee other people running those types of projects. So we would run hundreds a year across the globe. And that got me into the program level view of the world. As I started to understand taking the bits of work and translating it and rolling that up to leaders so that they could have a viewpoint on progress, viewpoint on performance and challenges, that then helped me build skills. And at that time, I should say during that time frame is when I was actively pursuing education in the realm of both business technology and project management. And that was supporting putting into practice some of those standards that you'd pick up in PMI, or you pick up in ESI, or you pick up in the boot camps and things like that. It took it off the page and allowed me to bring it into the real world of application. And then moving into strategic program management was where I started to do strategic management and planning for the leadership communities. So really raising it up a few thousand feet and organizing at what I would still reference as a business process. So every organization has HR community, they have finance, they have procure to pay, they've got sell to order, they've got all these business processes. And those can be ineffective or inefficient or not performing. And so then I would help the organizational leaders identify key initiatives that were aligned with outcomes. And then where can we go and create projects or just do it, if you will, okay, just get that done, or programs. And then as I evolved out of that, I got into really large scale IT, SAP implementation, that my role was organizational change management. So that was for a global presence in the organization at the time. And that was very scoped to organizational change management, but required all of my program and project management skill sets. You really needed to have a schedule, integrate with all the other functions, systems, integration teams, technical teams, vendor communities. So that's where it really that got serious in terms of skill usage.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
And,
No, and
and
I love, so just thinking about that whole progression, I actually think when I think about model, you know, PM journey, right? Like I think of your career a lot, Amy, because I think you have done, aside from going from engineering to project management, which I think is a really hard transition for a lot of engineers, from that point on where you're doing continuous process improvement up to program portfolio management, like that and OCM, like that is a natural progression. I'd love to hear, what do you think gave you the opportunity? Like what made that leader say, hey, Amy's ready to manage a portfolio for manage other people and lead other people versus being an individual contributor?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be making some assumptions here, but I manage complexity quite well. And I do tend to manage myself in such a way where I don't panic. I keep calm and I have a lot of solutions. So the structured problem solving was something as a skill set I learned way back as I started this conversation as a youngster, right? Like if I couldn't I got to get all that wood in by noon, how am I going to do that? Am I going to do it piece by piece, or am I going to use a wheelbarrow? Am I going to get my sister involved? What am I going to do? Right. So the structured problem solving and critical thinking are two other, you asked about characteristics. I do think that those are really important. That really gave me great foundation when you're running into a room where we're talking about multi-millions dollars worth of loss. And you've got people that are sitting in the room in their own functional realm and not really having that integrated view on things. How do I pull what we need from, let's say, the sales community in so that it helps the ops community? And how do you pull in, let's say, the marketing communities so that you're partnering with R&D that doesn't mock up the operations? So I think I was able to demonstrate that level of complexity and being able to sort that out and allow it to come out with a clear and concise approach, which was up for then discussion and pushed and pulled. And I never had the exact answer necessarily, but it was a good enough solution that allowed people to design a go forward approach. And then I would be the person that would manage the nits and the gnats of it. So, okay, who's got what? What's the due dates? All right, you said you're going to come in on such and such a time for that review. I'll schedule the review. So I also had a bit of accountability, a soft accountability drive where, hey, here's your weekly meeting, or here's what we're going to talk about. So that style of keeping people on track, coupled with the comfort with complexity, I think is what allowed me to be chosen. I will also say that we had an opportunity in this particular example that I'm thinking about is where I came from with lean manufacturing. And if you think about it back in the 80s and the 90s, it was really a tool or an approach, I should say, not a tool, there's several tools within that concept that were leveraged for cost reduction, efficiencies. I got to bring all of that knowledge and use it for growth, which was just an amazing opportunity. Just if you think about culturally, organizations that have to scrimp and save for pennies and pens, and you can't use paper, you're in a mindset that's just very different culturally. Then you move it into oh my gosh, what's possible and how do you apply this? So it was a wonderful experience because we had a very different level of engagement, a very different experience of engagement. And I think after demonstrating the usage of those tools and flipping them on their heads or those approaches, and it coming out with wonderful results, that then just furthered positioned me and having folks see that it was capable of taking something and using it for a different outcome. I think it worked out really well.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's, as the listeners hear that, they can think about how they can position themselves to take that next step too. That's great. Thanks for that.
Can-do attitude, take initiative, and be confident, I will tell you, are the things. When I say ambition, I didn't wait for somebody to tell me what to do.
Yeah,
I was ready.
Exactly. I love it. All right, speed round time. All right, so
Okay.
there's no right or wrong answers, right?
Okay.
I may judge you, but there's no right or wrong answers. Just kidding. I would never judge you. All right. First one, in the context of business: Slack, email, text, or phone call?
Ugh, situational. I will say, personally, I always love talking to somebody on the phone, but I will text, I will Slack, and I will email.
In that order.
Yes,
If you do not answer, then I will go to the next one.
that's right. I'll find you.
All right, agile or waterfall?
Hybrid.
Yeah, awesome, great. Speed or perfection?
Ooh, my goodness. So it's always continuous and process improvement in me is you're always seeking perfection at the speed of light.
Nice, nice. I like that. I think that's a fair answer. All right, what is your favorite PM tool right now?
Oh my goodness.
Or let me say it a different way. If your client said, "Hey, Amy, I want you to bring a tool that you prefer to help us achieve this goal," what would it be?
I would have to say, depends on what you're trying to do. I've used a variety. So I am learning ClickUp. I'm not a power user there, but I've used Jira at the task management level. I've used it. I've also used MS Project, but that's really for scheduling and dependency, that powerhouse there in that way. I know you're going to hate this spreadsheets. When I have organizations that don't have anything in play, I'm like, okay, let's just start by writing down tasks. But then, yeah. So I'm pretty flexible. I really don't have anything that's like this is my go-to and I'm not using anything else.
All right.
Um,
So let me flip the question. What's the worst one that you've used? You can be non-committal on that one too if you need to.
well, they all have their quirks. That's the thing. Gosh, they're not set up right. Plan view is probably, I mean, that's a portfolio tool. It's not a project management. I mean, it's a portfolio management tool. That's probably the most cumbersome I've ever worked with would be plan view.
There you go. All right. Well, we got a commitment out of you, Amy, there on that one. No, I honestly, I think it's a total trick question because I don't think there is a single tool,
So
single
every
tool that's
client I
bad.
never worked in, I've had them use them all. Monday, I've had Smart Sheets. We've had Jira totally misused and then properly used. I've used in your organization using ClickUp. And then I've seen spreadsheets and then I've seen Word. I've had people have projects on Word, like PowerPoint. So that's where some of it they try to help.
Yeah. 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 I don't know. Some of
I
those
will
folks
say
should not be
online
helped.
project management, I'm going to come back to that. Online project management has been the most difficult to work with a project manager.
Oh yeah.
If you have it on your desktop, it's usable, but when it gets into online, really hard.
Yeah, for sure. I hear you on that. All right, let's start wrapping this up. If you could give yourself one piece of advice, like younger Amy, here's the thing you should do to be a great PM, right? What would it be and why?
I got to be honest, I don't think I'd do a thing different. All of the oopses, all of the hard things are what made me what I am today. All the things that worked well helped me keep going. Yeah. So I don't think I'd have to tell myself to go back and do anything different because I'd be afraid I wouldn't be where I am today. And I'm quite happy with where I am.
I love it. Love it, Amy. That's awesome. All right, so this is the one that trips everyone up and it's a secret question. Who knows? If you could take on one gigantic project, right? You have unlimited funding, unlimited access to best and brightest on the planet. What would you try to fix?
Oh boy. On the planet. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
Limited. Well, I'd say global unity in a way that, like, are we all aiming at the same thing? I mean, that's one of the biggest questions. I could get down into, I've worked in state, public, private sectors. There's a lot of those that I would love to help rearrange and organize. But if it's going big and bold, I'd say, let's get us all together and say, hey, what are we doing? Where are we going?
I like
Are we
it, Amy.
divided? Are we not?
I like it. I like it. See, and there's still time, Amy. We still got time. You can tackle it. All right. Hopefully,
That's exactly it.
yeah, hopefully Gates and Bezos and everyone's just listening right now and they're going to throw dollars at this to make this happen.
I mean, I know there's division, but that's fine. I think just put it out there on the table. I mean, every organization has division, for crying out loud. Every function needs something else. That's the whole game of project management. You got to bring them all together. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
mean,
Amy, I love that one. That's a new one. That's a new answer. Because like I ask different questions at different times. I like that one. Global unity is awesome. Cool. Great. All right. So how should people get in contact with you, Amy?
The best way would be Amy at sageechelon.com and or LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Those probably the two best ways. Email, and then we can go from there.
Awesome. Sounds great. And we'll drop that in the description of the podcast. But
Wonderful.
I think that does it, Amy. That was fun. Thanks so much. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you sharing your story. Got a few laughs in there. Yeah. So thanks to everyone else who's joined us for Project Zero this week. Be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts, and we will catch you next time. Thanks again, Amy.
Thank you.